Good morning to everyone. I'm going to unmute Ken.
I'm unmuted. You're muted, Gina.
Sorry. Thank you all for your patience. I am juggling two computers here, and so I have to get the meeting started up on one computer and start recording, and then start Zoom on another computer and log in as myself and not LiveQuest, and
oh, good time.
A lot of spinning plates, as they say, or juggling balls. So I've already started recording. Cappy Peck is live on Facebook right now, so I won't be able to go live on Facebook until she concludes. But your class is already being recorded, so the entire recording will be on our Facebook or our LiveQuest page later. If people miss the entire class, they can go back and watch it. And your slideshow and handouts are already available on our website.
Oh, good. They won't have to listen to anything then.
Oh, I'm sure they didn't go and look for it beforehand.
Well, part of it won't be able to be on this one because I'm using a new program. I'm going to use some Adobe Illustrator, some stuff I used when I was doing illustration work so that I can quickly draw things instantly.
Oh, nice. Nice. So you'll actually get to do artwork for them during class today.
Yeah.
That'll be exciting.
It's very basic. But yeah, it's much easier to illustrate what I'm talking about this way.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be different and fun, see how it works out.
I have a cousin who is a graphic designer, and she has an iPad that she uses with pens to draw things, and does a lot of graphic design that way, and and traditional art as well, with pen and paper and paints and that kind of thing. But
yeah, that's kind of what I did. Well, a lot of times, really depends on what you do. Sometimes I would do it mostly by hand and then clean it up, in the computer programs with the tablet or whatever. Sometimes just draw it on the tablet.
Yep. It's really fascinating how much the digital world has complemented and in some cases replaced physical art, because photographers can use layers of photos and pick out what they like, and
artists can too. It's great. You can just layer stuff and shade it and do all kinds of fun things.
It's going to be really interesting later for curators to figure out what's genuine and what's been digitally done.
Oh yeah, because it just meshes so finely. Lots of it I can't tell.
Yeah, no.
If you really get into deep pixels, sometimes you can't.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to silence myself and make my picture go away and let you welcome people and have a good class.
Okay, I'll get my share screen up here. That one. And from the beginning. Come on now. From the beginning. There we go. Okay, we're going to look at 2 or 3 things today. I've been combining some of my classes since we're not really having any kind of drawing time in between and everything. So you're getting a lot of information in the 40 minutes that I might have spread out over a couple of classes sometimes. But in a lot of ways, I think this is better for these things. Today, we're going to look at arches. I never changed the title of that because we're not going to look at details and entourage, sorry. We're going to look at arches and how to abstract detail and then some fun stuff with atmospherics that are a lot of fun. So just to show you, there are so many arches. I couldn't believe it when I found this on the internet the other day. I thought, my gosh, I don't think I've ever seen all of these arches. We're going to talk about 2 that will pretty well cover everything. The rounded arch here. And just a simple Gothic arch. Where is a Gothic arch in all of this? Let's find one right here, the 3-pointed arch. That's your basic Gothic right there. So that's what we're going to look at. And just by learning a little about them, it'll make it easier to draw them and paint them when you do it. So here are 2 most common types, the Roman arch, which is the rounded one, and the Gothic arch, which is the pointed one. One of the really key things to know about any arch is it has a spring line, and that's where the curve starts. Generally, it's about 2/3 of the way up, but it can actually start at the bottom and curve up like that. But generally, we've got a vertical column all the way up, and then the arch starts, and that's our spring line. And because these are constant all the way across a series of arches, it can make it a lot easier to draw if we realize that and find it to begin with. So here's our Roman arch. We have our spring line here. They have lots of names for stuff. The keystone, which is the big center stone here. And this is the striking point. This is probably nothing we really need to be concerned about. There's more of a physical thing of how these forces of weight are pressing down on this arch, and it's going straight down here. As you can see, the way the arches, the stones in the arch send that force diagonally down to each pier and column there, and so it supports it. It gets a little more complex with the Gothic arch and how that's done. But here's a keystone here on this Roman arch on the left, and here they made a decorative keystone out of this monument, which may or may not have actual physical support of the building involved. But Romanesque arches are just everywhere you look, in windows and doors and things like that. So we have to draw them and paint them if we're going to be painting things that we see. Gothic arches. I really like this one in the upper right here. A nice old stone arch. Looks like it might go to a cemetery or a garden or something. But here again, there's the spring line there on the lower right, right across at the top of the piers, across the columns. And then this larger picture across the bottom, right there is the spring line on each of these. And notice it's the same all the way across there. And this is vertical all the way up till you get to that spring line. We get a lot of arches and bridges. And again, they're fun to draw. And because of water levels, you know, where that water is going to strike on the arch really can vary. It may be a halfway or maybe not. Generally, they're kind of constructed to be about halfway, but not always. So you get a lot of variation in these. But they're generally rounded arches. They're not often ellipses. Some are Gothic, but not very often. I haven't seen a lot of Gothic bridges. How to draw these arches. If you're looking straight on, like a one-point perspective in this picture, sometimes, you know, you can just draw the arch. If you're good at drawing an arch, you know, just draw the arch. But a lot of people have trouble drawing a really accurate one like that. So some helps that can help you is build a square first, and then put some crosses through it, get it centered up, and then you can kind of work at a quarter at a time or even an eighth of a time and work your way around and get a pretty good semicircle that way. Others will draw the whole circle. It makes it, as you circle like this, you can a pretty good circle if you've done it very often, and sometimes that's an easier way to do it too. You could use a compass, but really, you know, when we're drawing, who wants to use a compass? It's getting a little bit too much. I have a hard enough time using a ruler occasionally, and probably should do that more often. So let's look at some elliptical arches. These are just round arches, just like back here, but we're looking at them in perspective, and that turns them into an ellipse. And so I just thought I'd start with this one-point perspective, kind of a procedure you can follow. That will make drawing these kind of interiors a lot easier, and actually make, you know, even drawing your home interior quite a bit easier once you kind of realize what's going on here. And to begin with, always find that eye level there, and then find the vanishing point. The vanishing point, of course, is where all these lines converge. Anything below this eye level is going to go up like that to the vanishing point. Anything above eye level is going to go down to the vanishing point. And notice the farther higher up we get, and the closer to the center line of that vanishing point, the steeper the angles get. If we get off on that and we were to make, oh, this line I'm pointing at here steeper than this line, things would really start to look off. So you don't want to do that. And that's one good reason to just draw in these few pencil lines right here would really lay out this whole drawing for you. The rest wouldn't be that difficult, just filling in. Getting these arches can be sometimes, but they're not too hard to do that. The next step is going to be draw this back wall. And again, where you put this on your page is going to make a lot of difference. If you're trying to get in a lot of ceiling, you better keep this pretty low, or as you can see, these lines are going to run out on you very quickly. And in a very tall building like this cathedral, you know, that high level line is going to really be low. I was standing here, and that's the 5-foot level, and you can see, you know, it's almost on this little floor level right up here. So, you know, pretty low eye levels, almost a worm's eye view looking up this way. So that's the next step is get that in there, and that pretty well sets the scale of your drawing, that back wall. And that's always a good place to start, is that back wall. Drawing your perspective guidelines, and notice I've used those spring lines on the arch right there. I've got those so those arches will line up. If I didn't use that, things would really look off. I should have put in a sketch I used on Facebook to remind people of the class today. I had a drawing of some monastery ruins. And if you look real close at one of the arches, it makes it look like the wall turned. And that's because I didn't use any kind of a ruler on that. And I got one of the spring lines a little low, and it made it look like the whole wall was turning just a tad if you really look closely. So it's kind of important to get these lined up. You can see right there on those. And on this one, I wasn't exact, but I was close enough, I think. Another thing you can tell that I was kind of guessing at some column locations. If you'll notice, these columns were directly across from each other. And yet, look at the space between the column on the right and over here on these lefts. They have a wider space here than here. And I don't think I probably should have done that. But it's close enough for this kind of a drawing. Make sure you get in those perspective guides for your ceiling up here and the floor. Really, the guides you use depends on what you're drawing. And you just put in ones that are useful. I put in these because of these hanging parts of the ceiling all lined up, and I wanted to make sure I got those pretty close. So that's a thing to use on that. And then you start putting in the ellipses here. And these I guessed on. I didn't try and you know, use any kind of a drafting tool or anything like that. We'll be talking about how to lay these out just perfectly exactly whenever you want to, and it's fun to play with and easy to do. It's not so easy if you're just wanting to get a sketch down. It takes a little longer is all, and you need to lay it out. But we've got these arches, and we're giving them depth here. We've got always have shadow under the arch, and a lot of times at the base of the arch, in between these columns, there'd be a shadow too from this, and you don't want to leave that out as it adds depth to your drawing. So this whole chart here is just a good reminder of how to lay out one-point perspective in a room, particularly a large room. All right, here we go, poles in perspective. I'm going to go to my other program right now. Here we go. There. Come on now. There, all right. Now, I'm going to have to get rid of your pictures here somehow.
Ken?
Yeah.
We see the poles in perspective from your slideshow. Is that what you want us to see?
Oh, well, no. I want to change what I share. I'll do, oh, whoa.
That's okay. That may be the easiest way, is to share your screen again and then pick what you're sharing.
How's that? What can you see?
That's awesome. Now we can see your illustrator. Thank you.
Okay. Now I need to get rid of your pictures so I can see my control panel. Let's see what I can do on that. No. Oh, almost there. There we go. Okay, I'm good now. Okay, I can make this bigger now, I think. Yeah, okay. So here we are. We're going to make poles, or we're going to make arches, things like that. We're going to show an easy way to do that. And we're going to start with our eye level. We always got to know where that is. Generally, if you're out in a big field, it's the horizon. We'll just feel like we're making fence posts to the horizon, or actually telephone poles, because these are pretty tall poles. And then we're going to find our vanishing point. We're going to create one. Really, we want to make that kind of a guesstimate from what we see in reality, but I'm going to say I've already guessed that. And we're going to put in our first pole. And you can put in that however high you think they ought to be, and because that's going to be kind of what you base everything else on. You might consider that to be a telephone pole. Since it's at eye level, we're going to say this is probably about 12, 13 feet tall, because that would be about 5 feet roughly there. So we've got that in. Next, we're going to draw a top line, a line from the top of that pole to our vanishing point. And if you could, you know, if you were looking at reality here, you'd see these poles stretching off to the horizon. And so you just kind of draw a line, generally that angle to your vanishing point there. And you do the same on the bottom. So now you've got this bottom line going to the vanishing point and the top line going to the vanishing point. And now you want a midline. And this is important. A lot of times you get that confused with the eye level line, but don't. They can be different. As this pole is taller than halfway, you know, it's got to be taller than 10 feet or the midline would be right there. So we're going to say the midline is here and it goes to the vanishing point. Now we have all the lines we need to start putting things in. We're going to put in our second one, and we're going to estimate the distance between the first pole and the second pole. But we don't have to estimate the height at all, because that always fits between the bottom line and the top line. Now then, the rest of it is really simple, because we know exactly where each pole will fall. We put in a line that goes from the top of the pole through the midline of the next pole, down to the bottom line, and where that hits the bottom line is our next pole in perspective. It's a little closer than the distance between these poles and a little shorter. And as you can guess, we just keep doing that. The next pole, this line, red line, goes right through the center line and down, and where it connects to the bottom line, we put in another pole, a little closer, a little shorter. And of course, this just continues as long as we want to put in poles. So there you go. And you can put in as many. And this, by the way, as we'll see later on, works for arches as well. So pretty good deal there. It's fun to play with. You can make fences and you can make trees in a line or anything you can come up with in your imagination that you want in perspective like that. You can do it. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to do a stop share. And I'm going to do a share screen and back to PowerPoint. And there we are. And there it is drawn out. And this is in your handouts too, so that you could, this particular drawing here laid out for you. And so you can see how they just go off into the distance. And sometimes in the evening, I have a lot of fun drawing train trestles and things like this. Fun thing to do. And here it is with arches. So looking at these, see, you do the same thing. You might get in one arch here. You find the midline of that arch, the top line of the arch right here, and here, here. So we're going to put our line down. It's going to a vanishing point somewhere. We may not know where. It's off here somewhere. We need our eye level line in here, our spring level line. I think I put an eye level line on this or it disappeared. But you do kind of need that. And again, our midline, and we just draw these lines right through here. And so we know the position of these arches. Now we've also got some width to deal with in here. And basically you've got to decide, are you going to do it on each side of this arch and keep it the same side each time, or down the center of the arch? and just work from there. Once you know what you've chosen, just be consistent with it all the way down, and it'll work out just fine. There's also dimensionality to this 3D, and that's with the curve of this upper part of the arch. And as you'll notice, we get less of the interior visible as we go down here till we get down to about this ellipse, and you can't see anything but a little sliver of the interior. So we have to account for that. And you can actually sketch this out and make this essentially a rectangular box, and draw what you've drawn here on the other side and get these exactly right. But really, all you got to do is look up here and see about where this point of the interior and the top part of the arch strikes this area here, and just put your curve down. Each time, it's a lot quicker and easier, of course, to do that. So there's that spring line again, helping us along. Again, we can make X's, that's what these green arrows are here, through each of these rectangles. And where they strike is the center, more or less midline here, where they're crossing. And this will help us draw in ellipses easier than just guessing them sometimes. So I put that in there for people that want to do that. Sometimes I do that as well. Okay, and arches are just everywhere. You can use them in compositions like this flower here. I put an arch for the background. They're really good for framing devices. If you're out sketching, you can find an arch, you can draw what's through the arch. You can see over here on the far right, I just put in a hint of an arch right here so that you can tell that I'm looking out from under something that's got a large arch at this building over here on the right. So this was downtown, of course, in the park on the river, looking at the Junction Bridge. So let's talk about abstracting dense detail now. This gives people trouble a lot of times, and there's some ways to go about it that simplify it. And just to kind of give you a comparison, here is a Corinthian column I drew, and it took about 3 hours the other night. I timed it. Just really concentrated freehand drawing. I didn't lay anything out on this. I just sketched it with a couple of pencils. Probably, I think I used a 2B and a 4B graphite pencil on that. Here is the picture of the arches. This may not be the exact arch, but it's from this photo. And so here's one, 10 minutes with a pen, 5 minutes for color. You know, do you want to spend 10 minutes or 3 hours? You know, this is a lot easier and quicker. Now, most of us don't have time for this sort of thing. So how do we go about doing this and getting essentially the essence of arch in there? The way to do it is squint and not trying for much detail, of course. I first get the general shape of the object. And here is kind of a triangle that's cut off, a little bit of a curve down here. This curve here curves in the opposite. And I get that going to some extent like these. And I then squint and start putting in some highlights. That seems the first thing that pops into my eye. And those highlights there. And so I'll draw those. That gives me a place to start. And then I'll put in the darkest darks and get those going. After that, you just kind of fill in with things that look about right, that give you the gist of what you're seeing. You hear all kinds of numbers on this. Do not try for too much detail in a small sketch course. 30% of what there is enough. The percentage just varies. Some people say 70%. So you get the entire range, but really it's what you need. This is a very small sketch here in the center, so it has a lot less detail than even this sketch, which is about, a couple of times larger probably. So I put a little more in it, but not a great deal. That really wasn't necessary. So really the amount of detail depends on the size of your drawing, what you're trying to talk about. If you're doing a really large column, then probably, you're wanting to emphasize the nature of the column itself, and so you're going to put everything into it that you might, all the detail and nuance that you could. But for general sketching, painting purposes, you know, just not necessary. Here's another one, very quick. Squint. Notice how I blurred this column over here. That's to kind of be the same as squinting, to give you an idea of what it would look like, and how you can see these lights right here, and then you can see the darks under them right here and here. And then just a hint of lines. Notice these kind of come to triangular points. You know, that's kind of all you got to do. There's a little dark there you can put in, a little highlight here. Get that oval up there. You don't have to really know what it is or, you know, what's in it. Just put a little circle there and that'll be good. Here's another way of looking at it. I blurred this one on the right to help you kind of see and reduce that detail. If you just look at this and sit down and draw it, you could spend quite a time getting all of this in accurately, and you'd probably get tired of it long before you did. But you can squint and just get the main details of this. Like down here on the lower right corner, this arch here, you'd put in this arch. Look, there's that shadow under it. You really want to get that shadow and highlight. That's important. Same with these shadows under this horizontal beam across the top of the arch. Get that shadow in. You could hint at a little bit of darks in this triangular shape here, and that'd be about all you need. With these here, you know, a couple of circles, you get this kind of a upside down V, or that's actually a Y upside down, you'd say. That's kind of a highlight there, draw that in. Maybe just a curve right under here would catch that shadow really well. And here's sort of an S curve on that one. So that sort of thing, you know, you're just really hinting at this stuff and not worrying about detail. In these shields, I would probably just draw the shield shape. You could put, if you were doing color, watercolor, you might put a dot of color in each corner. That would probably be even more detail than it might demand, but you certainly wouldn't be trying to draw all of these coats of arms exactly right. The same up here, I would divide this into 2 blues and 2 reds with yellows or gold and call that good. Could kind of hint at these lion shapes. The man up here, I wouldn't put a lot of detail in, but I would get the proportions right. I get these darks above the head and make sure that's shown as a head. I'd get these 2 darks here right because that pretty well delineates the waist of that person. And then underneath this coat, get those darks right, and you've got the legs there. Because people will look at that. I know when I first look at that, what do I look at? Maybe these people or maybe this. You know, even these doors seem to be secondary to the human figure. So I had really, although it doesn't need detail, it does need the proportions correct, so it does look like a person. These windows up here, I would really probably only suggest these mullions if I did that. If you try and put in every one, it just puts too much detail up there. You can draw just pieces of them, you know, kind of a broken line down maybe halfway of it, and a few cross pieces that would maybe not even go all the way across. So you'd want to do it that way. So again, I'd really reduce detail and things in these. And don't let extraneous background get in the way of your focal point. This is the Rosslyn Chapel. This was in the Da Vinci Code movie. It's very, very ornate inside. And if you had just tried to draw everything you see here, it would take forever to begin with, even on the column. And this is almost the same color as the column, as you can notice in here. And so you really have a hard time, your eye delineating between the wall and the column because you don't have quite enough visual contrast. You know, we see by contrast. Light against dark is just how we visually see. The color is really extraneous to that. So decide what your focal point is and then reduce the detail in the background. As you can see, I did on this column. I just pretty well got rid of everything, just a little bit of a hint of the columns and arches behind it. And again, I've abstracted these details. You know, you can see how intricate all of this is and how I just put a few squiggles and just whatever I saw at the time that looked dark and shadowy or needed to highlight, something like that. And really the same on this column. I put in more ink line on those column flutes than I really even needed. Kind of overdid that. And then look at the color, how I changed that. I warmed it up considerably. This is kind of a dull whitish gray marble. It's very pretty, but I wanted to use some color. And so I used some yellowish ochres, probably used yellow ochre on that. Might have used Naples yellow. It's been a long time. That was in 16. So not sure what I used on that. But then I threw in some colors called sparkle colors, just to sort of brighten it up, make it a little more interesting. I used a blue for the shadows down in here along that. And then threw in a bit of red, violet. That looks like maybe a bit of green I put in that. Violet over here in the shadow. So just a touch of color to make it interesting. In the background, just to keep from having a flat yellow tone here, I put in some shadow stripes, just some random really, to kind of bring some interest to the background without overpowering the foreground. Put in a few colors up here that really are just there for that. This is called the apprentice column because it was supposed to have been made by an apprentice to one of the masons constructing this cathedral, and they got into an argument and one of them got killed or something like that.
And John has a question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess this is a general question. This one, and especially the one earlier where you had the watercolor of the inside of the chapel where you were showing the vanishing point.
Yeah.
Those are pretty detailed.
Yeah.
When you're actually on site and you're drawing as opposed to taking a picture and going back and doing detail later, do you just draw on site, or do you try to do the watercolors and color it in while you're there?
It just depends on time. You know, when you start really abstracting this detail, you know, you sort of come up with patterns, and you can do that very quickly. It's not like looking at each line. You know, when you look at that column I drew back there, I had to find where each line went and each shadow, and that really takes some time. Here, I was pretty much sketching after squinting at it a bit and laying these highlights out. I pretty much did the rest just without having to look at it a great deal, and that went, as you can see, very quickly. And I got a lot of line variation. I was using a bent nib pen on this, one of those Sailor Foodie pens. As you'll see a lot of line variation, thick and thin lines, very quickly put down. So you get a lot, which kind of suggests detail even when there's not, when you get enough of this line variation going on. So you can do a lot quick that looks more detailed than it really is on that. Now that building here, I didn't do that on site. I did that off of a photo, and yeah, I just took my time on that. I left out, if you'd seen the photo, I probably should have the photo up here. There is a lot of detail in this ceiling that I just totally left out. It would have cluttered it up to the point that you really couldn't tell the structure of the ceiling, I think, by the time I had got that much pen work in it. And another thing, if you put too much pen work in something, or even pencil, pretty soon you've affected the tone of the painting. It will just get dark on you. And if it's a light ceiling and you've got so much pen work up there that it may look dark gray or black even. So you have to kind of be careful of that, sort of balance that as well, because you really don't want to do that. And that can be hard to do on a very bright surface sometimes, because on a really brightly lit surface, even a little bit of tone to show texture in a building will start to make that surface look less bright if you put too much on it. So you just really have to be careful and just hint at the texture sometimes. Where were we? There's that old column there. Okay, we're going to go talking a bit about atmospherics now, and that's just a general term for a lot of little things that we can add to paintings. We have dots and sparkles, spatter, just about anything you can think of, and basically all of them are used to create visual interest when perhaps there's not as much as we would like. And keep it just from feeling flat. And a lot of the atmospherics give vitality to your sketch. And so they're used a lot. These are called atmospheric dots. You can see on these trees, just some little dots around here and there. The same on this sketch. We see dots in the rock. You can call it texture or something, but they're just dots and you can put them anywhere. You can use them to kind of help put the focus in a sketch sometimes, but often as not, they're really not in places that are important to the focal point of the painting because they might distract from that if you put too many of them in the area. That's the main thing with dots is don't put too many of them in. You can overdo it very easily and then it starts to look like you're trying to stipple the picture or painting that you're doing, but not really doing a good job of that. So gotta be careful with them, but they can be good. Sparkle is a lot of fun and something I use a lot. And in fact, sparkle is, that would be considered sparkle. Just adding a bit of color into that column there, random color to brighten things up. It's called sparkle. It helps a lot. Here, there's confetti. There's these red dots up in here. But also look at the walls of these buildings. Just some red struck through here and here randomly to provide color and accents. We have these red-green complements going on that provide those accents. So that really helps with just making it more vital, a more active picture, as you can see from that. We've got dots in it, a little bit of spatter perhaps even. So can do those sorts of things with it. Some more here, I was teaching at the Maumelle Wellness Center on the lake, and this was the view out of our classroom window, and you can see some of the things I've added. I got a few dots here, but also sparkle. If you'll look in this evergreen tree here, a little bit of blue, turquoise, probably cobalt turquoise stuck in there, little bits of red, just to add a little bit of brightness and sparkle to it. I guess if they're closer to Christmas, they might look like Christmas lights if you put too much in there. So you kind of have to be careful with that and not overdo it. They're just really sort of supplementary thing. I did, as I mentioned on this particular thing here, use some complementary colored flowers beneath the cedar. They weren't there, but they made a nice complement to the green tree and helped bring out a lot of color, you know, and pop into this little sketch. Also at the top up here, I did much the same. Had this green tree, and so I put next to it this kind of reddish orange, light red colored tree next to it for a complement and to brighten up the picture. If you'll look under the eaves of these houses, I threw in a little bit of sparkle there. There's some cobalt, teal blue probably in there too. A little bit of violet here. You want to use bright, cheerful colors for that sort of thing. If you use dull, muted colors, it wouldn't be very sparkly, would it? So you want to use something pretty vibrant for that sort of thing. Here we have a few atmospheric dots here and a few bits of color just added out here. Yeah. Now this is interesting use of spatter. It just brings a lot of energy to a drawing. I really like using it. Also, if you know, you feel like you've really messed up the site or messed up a part of it, well, if you do this to it, you know, it's spattered and it looks like you meant to do it just like that. And as you can see, it makes a very interesting skies at times. So even though you think you've ruined a painting, you know, don't give up. You might do some more to it and turn it into something very interesting. Just don't be afraid to throw some paint on it and see what happens. Here's some examples I've done, some light spatter. I did this sketch over here of these buildings in Falkland, and it was just kind of, I don't know, dull, lifeless. I didn't think there was much to it. So I spattered it a bit, and I think that added just a bit more life to the picture. I think that sky was kind of flat and really wasn't saying anything for one thing, and that might have helped with the spatter doing that. The spatter down here was essentially just sort of a textural thing. Spattered some, really looks like sepia or raw umber there. And so I did that. On this one, I purposely spattered this one because it was such an interesting sketch. We were out with our Urban Sketchers group, and we're running out of time here. We were drawing things at Scott, Arkansas. There's lots of great things to sketch there. And this looked like such a monster, and I don't know, very much like an insect to me. And so I just put a lot of red spatter to make it very active, and I used the red because it was a complement of this green. And I like that sketch. That was fun to do. Here you can do some different kinds. This with toothbrush kind of, so you can really get heavy with it. Toothbrush always gives you very fine spatter for the most part. These larger ones probably would have been done with a brush. Generally with a brush, the larger the brush, the heavier the spatter you're going to get. If you get too big a brush, you'll get big old puddles and probably not what you want. So you need to experiment, and you need to kind of mask off the areas you don't want spatter on. I just lay some printer paper around the area to protect it, and that works just fine. I don't use masking tape or anything like that to protect areas. So here's some very, very controlled spatter. This is a picture of Mike Van Ness I did. You can see it at the Van Ness pen store these days, I think, if we ever get to go back. I wanted these ink drops in here. I wanted them to spatter just right. So I practiced a lot, and I stood on a stool, and I dropped them from a height out of a ink dropper, and I diluted the ink till I got that just right. I kept practicing, and then I masked off all the area I made sure I didn't want ink to get onto, and then carefully aimed my eyedropper and dropped these 5 spatters on it. I thought, well, maybe I could add one more, and then I thought, you know, you better stop. And so I did, and I like the way that turned out, but it was really kind of hard getting the right dilution of this ink. Pure ink was too black, and I couldn't do that, so I had to thin it down. And then getting the right height so that I got the right spatter was something I had to experiment with as well. So it was fun to do things like that. You'd think a little spot like that, you know, how many times have you done it accidentally? But when you try and do it on purpose, it's another thing. Before we wind up here too, here's something you can do that's very simple and quick, and that is take a watercolor pencil and a water brush and just wipe that water brush, flick it off of the tip, and you can get spatter very easily. Some of this larger spots, like right there, probably came from this paintbrush. I did it once or twice to compare spatter. With this particular brush here, I can get very fine spatter up to about medium size. It really depends on how wet you get this brush before you start wiping it across here and flicking it. But you can actually control things a little better with that water brush than you can with the regular paintbrush. That's worth a try, and you have a large variety of colors quickly at hand if you're using watercolor pencil. Another thing, monochromatic spatter. This coincides with the color in the painting, and that's another thing. You know, consider what color you're going to use if you're going to use spatter. And there's some nice ink spatter. This is some Asian drawing. I really like some of the Asian sketch artists these days. They just do such great work with particularly pen and ink and spatter like this. Sandpaper scraping. You can scrape lines in the sky. This is before painting, and so the paint seeps into the scrape mark. This is after painting, so you can scrape things there. You can also use a knife and scrape a little out. I might have done that there, I'm not sure. It makes very good wood grain. You can use a piece of sandpaper, about 80 grit, and run it down the board you're painting, and then put on the paint, and you'll get very, very realistic looking grooves in it to look like wood. Cauliflowers are great. You know, we mess them up in our skies and we just all upset and everything, but you can turn them into a great sky when you take a look at these. It's very stormy, very artsy, and you know, a lot of times we make these and consider them a mistake, but they can work out really well. And you can make them on purpose by putting a bit of water into your sky right before it's really dry enough to be doing things like that. And you can make good cauliflowers that way. Here's some cauliflowers and runs that turned into a cloud by doing that. So, you know, it's not a lost painting at all. Some atmospheric lines. This is interesting, drawing in clouds. You don't see people do that very often, but it worked really well, I thought, in this sketch. Here, a pen and ink, use atmospheric lines. A lot of times they sweep up, and in general, you want your lines closer together as you get to the horizon, farther apart as you go away. These are hard to make. You have to be sure of what you're doing and make one quick motion, and trying to keep them all parallel and in a curve can be kind of hard, and so it's best to do short lines like you'll notice right here to make those curves, rather than try to do it all at once where your hand may waver. There's a little bit of wavering right in here, and that's fine, that's human, you know, that's how it is. And it still works very well. These are really nice ink paintings. I think Peter Caldwell is really a good one. Here's some more ink lines in the sky to make clouds, and I used a water-soluble ink, and so you could smooth out some of these, soften the edges, leave some hard edges, like that by using that ink, and kind of give a feel for the cloudiness of the day. Sun flare, I'll just mention, put it in with a very pale yellow pastel or white pastel chalk or a very light blue chalk. And it works really well. You can scrub this in. The hardest part is, unless you fix it, it might rub off onto other sketches on the facing pages. But it's a very good effect with watercolor, and it's got a lot of uses in it. I like having some around for that. Colored skies, another thing you can do. Don't feel like you've got to be stuck with one color. You can pick any color you want, put in the sky, and it'll work because people know it's sky. Pencil stroke is another thing. It gives you lots of energy and unifies your sketch. Very good thing to do. Don't feel like you have to have very totally smooth color all the time at all. You can make great sketches with a lot of line and a lot of energy. Pencil strokes in the sky, white gel pen, very useful for that. A lot of colored pencil, you can see a lot of stroke energy in that. So you can do lots with that. Got little sparkles over here in this tower, just a little bit of color here and there, just to brighten things up, and in the sky too. Here's a really great example. This is Pat Southern Pearce. She just does beautiful work on tone paper, doing those kind of skies. And that yellow you see is actually a highlighter pen, just your standard average highlighter. And blotches. There's just no end to what you can do with skies and things, techniques for texture. Don't be afraid to try things like that. Whites in the sky and a pencil drawing on tone paper work really well. I like doing that. And just scrubbed a little in for a cloud above that watercolor there on some tone paper. You can even get smeary. These are kind of paintings I like to do a lot of times. This is Oklahoma in a rainstorm right there. And you can be very minimalist. There's one stroke right there, and that's it. That's all I needed for a sky on that. So put it all together, and you can really have an interesting sky. A lot of sparkle, wood tone, wood grain cut in with sandpaper. You can also use sandpaper for grass, by the way. It makes a good grass down there. Lots of spatter, lots of line, highlighter up in here, a little bit of pastel. This one has it all. So that's it. Keep on sketching. We have 2 more classes, and I'll want to cover some points about composition And we're going to be looking at unity and mood and a lot of really interesting paintings, probably less of my own and more some really interesting things, a lot from the 30s that I happen to like. So that's it.
We really appreciate you, Ken. And I know that the artists are having fun doing their own thing. And I see a lot of them busy at work doing their whatever they're inspired to do, I suppose. And I know that it's not the same as when you get to be in class and see how they're progressing. So if any of you have art that you want to share with Ken, I encourage you to take photos of it and email it to him, ask him his opinion. He would love to give it to you. We really appreciate Ken doing this, and he's such a smooth operator, switching between programs in there so he can show you Illustrator and stuff. If any of you have questions, go ahead and unmute yourself, or let me see what's going on in the chat here. Doris Crane says thank you. Janet says thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, me too. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it.
Anybody with questions, email me. I'll be glad to
Mary Ann and
reply.
Lynn are clapping for you. So.
See what happens.
Ken,
We'll really appreciate it.
Sure. Well,
Thank you so much. If you want to review this later, we'll have it on our website. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
okay. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.